Right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm going to go ahead and start the screen share here and jump right in to this business transformation event. And I want to introduce you all to Infinite Shift. Um, And I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Johanna Vodian. Infinite Shift, the name came about because as someone who has been in project planning, project management for over 25 years, we all know that our best laid plans never work out exactly the way we expected. So we are always in this infinite shift. As I said, my name's Johanna Bodian. I'm the owner, consultant, founder of Infinite Shift. And my specialty is in organizational program management, strategy management, and I have spent a lot of time focusing on large business transformations. And I put all of that under the umbrella mergers and acquisitions under that umbrella, large client implementations, organizational restructuring, all of that kind of falls under what I would refer to as business transformation and what we'll cover here in this course today. I have background in healthcare and the financial services industry. I've spent a number of years in the technology space across multiple different industries as well. I have my MBA and a master's in project management, as well as having done my coursework, my undergrad coursework in management information systems at St. Louis University. So I am still local here to St. Louis. If we have anybody on from the St. Louis area, welcome, you guys. Some of this will be familiar to you in my intro. I do work with St. Louis Community College Foundation Board, so helping their organization to raise money for kids wanting to go to college or even adults wanting to pursue a college degree after having been in the workforce for a while. And we put together scholarships for those students so they have that ability. And I work with Covenant House here in St. Louis. And I'll actually talk a little bit more about Covenant House in a minute, but I wanted to introduce you all to my why as well, my husband Paul and my four boys. 17 to 8 years old. And if you hear any background music this morning, that's because my 15-year-old is practicing guitar in the basement today. So maybe you'll catch a few notes of that. And just a little bit more about me personally. I mentioned Covenant House. This is a picture of me picking up my cardboard box when we did the executive sleep out with Covenant House and got to experience sleeping outdoors in order to raise money for homeless youth. That's the mission of the Covenant House St. Louis. And they hold this executive sleep out once a year in November. And I was very lucky. It was not a cold November night that night when I participated, but we did raise a great amount of money for that charity. The center picture here is me as a small business owner. We did close our toy shop in Herman, Missouri last December, just a few months ago. My partner and my aunt retired. And so we decided we'd close the shop and move on as I was starting the consulting business and working full time and taking care of boys. We got rather busy, but you can see I do have a little bit of free time every once in a while. And I love to travel, love to go to the ocean. and go on vacation with my kids. This is my son George and I goofing around. If you all have not been, if you're in the St. Louis area and you've not been to Central Park in Chesterfield, there's this amazing statue of a giant emerging from the ground, and he's raising up one hand and his mouth's wide open. George and I like to go over there and goof around, take funny pictures by the statue once in a while. All right, but we will go ahead and get into this business transformation workshop today. And again, thank you guys for taking the time. I hope as we go through this today, you'll really think about what you can take away from this and what you can learn. I tried to pack some good information in here, but you can see this is typically done in a 3-day workshop, and we're going to cover it in probably less than an hour today. So there's a lot of content here for you. And I'm hoping you can take away 1 or 2 key things. Obviously, we're not going to get everything that you would in a typical workshop, but this is something that I offer to come into organizations and do the 3-day workshop, sit down with you and help you go through this. So certainly reach out to me at infiniteshiftllc.com or infiniteshift@protonmail.com. I'll have my contact information at the end as well if this sounds like something that you'd like to do for the full 3 days. Now, as we get in, this is one of my favorite quotes: knowledge becomes wisdom only after it has been put to good use. And I read somewhere recently that 10% of our knowledge we get from coursework and just formal education development. The next 20% from actually being with a mentor or somebody who has knowledge in a specific area who is teaching us. And then the remainder, 70% actually comes from our own experience. So as you're going through this, I want you to also think about what I'm sharing and how you can apply it everyday life. Even if you need my help with that, happy to help anybody in those areas. If you need some mentoring or just some extra eyes on something, I am passionate about these topics. So let's just really dive in and talk about what drives business transformation. And there's 4 primary things when we think about this that organizations are trying to achieve when they undertake a business transformation. They're either changing their strategic direction, they're acquiring or divesting a business, or maybe being acquired by another business. They might be implementing a new client or launching a new product. I'm sure there are other reasons, but these are primary reasons that you see when undertaking a large business transformation. And why are these transformations so complex? If you're a project manager and you've joined us here, you'll recognize these risk factors, right? There are always going to be unknowns that you can't plan for. They're completely out of your control. There are a lot of known unknowns. And as you think about this, and as we walk through this, I'll also ask you to really be reflective in when we overlook or underestimate those manageable risks. So you'll notice also as I'm talking through today, I will talk about who we typically invite into our organizations when we're doing these large business transformations, right? They're the top 4 big consulting firms who do this really well. They have all the templates, they'll come in. And typically, when we think about how we're doing these business transformations and when they bring their experts in, they'll focus on the vision, the objectives, the execution, pretty straightforward way. Obviously, there's a ton of detail, right? They bring a lot of knowledge and experience with that, as well as all of the typical artifacts that you would expect to see in large programs, um, and they'll execute it for you. But what I want you to really think about is training your own people and how important that is, because when the consultants walk out the door, you still have to be able to sustain this culture that you were seeking to develop through whatever transformation you are undertaking, for whatever reason that was, if it's merger acquisition, or if you're merging or bringing together two parts of your organization to avoid um, some duplication that may have existed or been built up over years. Whatever the reason is, you want that muscle built within your own team so that so things don't fall apart when whomever you brought in to help you walks out the door. So this is how we typically think about a large business transformation, but how should we be thinking about these large business transformations? And I gave you guys a little bit of a hint here. There are three components: culture, change, and communication, that become so key to this. And you can't make it as simple as this very structured kind of um, playbook that somebody might hand you when they walk in the door, right? Because you are looking at an organization full of individual people who are going to see culture change in different ways. They're going to need you to communicate to them in different ways for them to really understand the goals you're trying to achieve, the vision that you're sharing with them, and where you ultimately want your business to be at the end of this transformation. So I really want to bring forward the importance of the three C's as we move forward talking about this. Um, I cannot emphasize enough. And you'll see a lot of organizations either talk about this from a process standpoint or a people standpoint. And I'm really seeking to bring the two together. And this is a great quote, I think, also, as we're talking about the change that this creates in an organization. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So, as you're thinking about all of those different people who are looking at things through all these different lenses, make sure that they're facing forward and they're not looking back. So when we're managing that change, some of these are really typical. And again, I'm not going to bring forward to you in most of these slides things you haven't heard before. But a lot of this information can just be Googled, right? You can go out on the internet and find a lot of things about change management. You can find a lot of things about managing M&A. But these are just some of the key things that I want to be in your mind as we continue through this conversation. Go into any change with the student's perspective, right? Be ready to learn, be curious about what's happening. What's that special thing that in your business you need to maintain intact? What's your secret sauce, right? What are you really going for from a vision perspective? And we'll get into visioning a little bit here in a minute also. Also, where can you gain synergies? What are you trying to change about the organization? Are you eliminating duplication and you can get a lot of value from that? Next, document. The decision-making process is so important when you're going through one of these large business transformations, and you need to know who's making decisions today, how they're being made, what process is being followed, and who will be making them going forward. I have a great tool toward the end of the presentation here that I'll share with you called Rapid. It was developed by Bain and Company, and I'll share some really good techniques you can use and that from that standpoint. And then sharing the information. You have to be able to communicate things with your organization. And really, when you're talking about the vision, your goals, your objectives, how are you communicating that to the individuals in your organization who, remember, they have to consume information and they do it in different ways, right? They have different styles, they have different needs. Um, I think it takes something like 17 times for you to hear something before you know it. So if you think you have communicated enough, communicate 10 times more. Like, full stop, communicate, communicate, communicate. It is not something you can do without. And I think, again, this is one of the things that we create complexity when we aren't sharing the information with the organization. We aren't managing these risks that really are manageable for us. We just have to put the plan in place. So next, we'll talk about the combining of the cultures. When we're setting this vision or mission, we want to have in mind, we want to visualize what that means from a culture perspective. So I'd even ask you all to just close your eyes for a minute and think about, if you're embarking on this large business transformation, what is your vision for the people in your organization at the end of this transformation? How do you want them to feel? What are the behaviors that you want them to be able to carry out? The integrity, the trust, the transparency, all of those things need to be envisioned at the very beginning so you know what kind of culture you want to create. So keep that in your head. If you closed your eyes, you can open them back up as we move on. I'm going to talk again about just some of the structure that is going to be in existence, and any large consulting organization, they don't even have to be large. Any good consulting organization that comes in to help you with this will take you through the vision, goal, objective, strategy, conversation, right? Hopefully you have a vision in mind before you hire somebody to come in and help you out. Um, but if you don't, they'll take you through this process and they'll want to know what your vision is. They'll want to hear it from you. They'll want to hear the passion from you and how you express these things. So this framework, again, you guys, you can Google this. It's out there. Many of you may have even done it in your capstone in business school. But one thing I do want to point out is there are also a lot of wrong capstones out there on the internet, so beware. They'll interchange some of these words. Obviously, vision, mission are intentionally interchangeable, but sometimes things are mixed around, like strategies before goals, objectives. I think that this is the flow that actually makes sense. And I've given an example here. I won't go through the whole example, but when we talk about the vision and the goals at the highest level, then your objectives or your outcomes that you want to get, and then your strategies or your tactics of how you're going to get there. So again, really foundational things, some of the first stuff that we will talk about if we're in a 3-day workshop. But I would expect anybody coming into your organization to be laying this foundation with you as well. Really, it's key. It's important stuff, right? And then the program hierarchy, kind of a next step. We know what you want to do. We know how you want to do it. Who are you going to do it with? Who's going to lead this for your organization? You really start with that program sponsor So, who is the person who is going to be that passionate advocate, that leader for carrying out your vision, for setting your goals, for holding the team accountable to it? Who is that? It's an important role. Um, when you're thinking about the person who is going to play this role, you want to be really thoughtful. You want to be thoughtful about the whole team, but this is really a key role and a key player for your success. And then the steering committee. The steering committee is going to support your sponsor. They're probably going to be key decision makers in a lot of this process. And there'll be people who go across the organization. They sit in different departments across your organization. And then your program office. And you guys, this is a typical program structure. Again, like nothing you can't Google and find. You could replace the word program office with project manager. And this is a really typical structure for any project, right? It what varies is the number of people you're going to have involved. And in a large business transformation, as we think back to that communicate topic, it is so important because in something this size, when you're undertaking a merger and acquisition or you're undertaking a large client implementation, you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of people that are going to be impacted by this. So it's really key when you're building your team to be thinking about that. Um, and then your work stream leads who are carrying out the work, who are responsible for certain aspects of the work, and who those supporting stakeholders are, right? What are the dependent parts of your organization? And your program office is managing this up and down, right? Ensuring that the progress from the work stream leads and their teams are known, understanding the dependencies, helping to get decisions made at the steerco level, and help eliminating roadblocks you might have with risks and issues that arise during the whole process. So you want to have really clear descriptions for each of your roles. Also, you want to know how frequently these people are going to be meeting and how frequent updates are that they need. A couple other things that I will just say about the program hierarchy. This is a very simplistic view that I've shared here. If you are embarking on a client implementation or a merger and acquisition, you may have a mirrored program hierarchy for your external partners, right? If you're acquiring another business, there may be a mirror of this hierarchy for the target company for whomever is being acquired. And likely then there is a bridge between those two organizations because in those complex mergers and acquisitions, there is a point in time where these lower level people aren't communicating with each other yet. You may be at a sponsor to sponsor level, you may be at a CEO to CEO level, like with a bridge organization facilitating those conversations. And likewise, in a large client implementation where you may not have all of the need for the formality of a bridge organization or something that comes into play from a regulatory standpoint that would be required, you still need to have that mirror so that you understand who at your client is responsible for making decisions so that you can move smoothly through this process. So one of the things, before I move on to the stakeholder matrix, even though this is a really standard approach, what I hope you're taking away as we talk through this is it's not just about the template, it's about how you execute. It's about the relationships and the conversations and the detail of care that you put in as you're forming these artifacts, and then how your team utilizes them, how you train your team to utilize them so that they can be most effective. That is really the key. Again, really standard stuff here. Stakeholder matrix, who's on the team, what's their role, who do they report to, um, so title versus role on the initiative, and then are they a primary or secondary decision maker in some cases? So we'll get into that in even more detail because I have a lot of information to share around stakeholder management. And this is one of the places that I am so passionate about. And we can do so much. This is such a key part of any large business transformation, this intersection between your stakeholder matrix that I just shared with you, which really is, names of people on a placemat, right? In a matrix, in a spreadsheet, and how we interact with them, how they interact with each other. That's the key piece. That's your key to success. A lot of organizations do stakeholder management, right? And they stop when they put the names and the titles and the roles down on paper. Sometimes, many times, actually, I've seen stakeholder matrix where they've not even identified who the decision makers are. They haven't really thought about it. You can spend a tremendous amount of time churning if you don't know who your decision makers are. It's so, so important and overlooked so frequently. The relationship management piece then comes back into what I said earlier. Communicate, communicate, communicate. This is your map to how you're communicating with people. You know who your team is. You know who your stakeholders are. Now, who and how are those relationships built? So you need to really think about this from the standpoint of that symbiosis, that give take relationship, right? How are people relating to each other? How are they consuming information? What are the styles of the individuals who are key to the success of your large business transformation? Who's in their circle of influence? You're going to need decisions made quickly. If you can't get that decision made, who's the CEO going to be sitting in next to on the plane to the meeting they're on their way to? Can you get that person on the phone? Can they drop the message for you? Can they reinforce something? We really need this done by this time because XYZ. Did you see the email? All of those tactics are really key and why you want to document these things, why you want to think about them up front. And then who are your detractors and who are your champions? Obviously, you need the people who are there rooting, who are behind you, who know the reason and the value that is being driven by this large business transformation and what it means to the organization. But the detractors are just as important. If somebody is skeptical about the success, you might have to do a lot more work with them than you do with your champions, right? You might have to communicate more frequently with them in different ways at different times so that they're able to absorb the information because people have a ton of information coming at them every day. It might be not be intentionally detracting. It may just be that they've got busy lives and they're doing a lot every day, right? So this intersection between your stakeholder matrix, the stakeholder management, and the relationship management is really going to set you apart. And it's so important, again, that the people within your organization get this and understand this on a daily basis. So you can have a greater level of success through your communication plans. Your decision making will be smoother. You will get risks and issues mitigated more quickly. And ultimately, you're going to deliver the value that you're expected to deliver to the organization in the time frame that you're expected to. So I can't stress this piece enough. It's something you guys can tell I'm super passionate about. And honestly, one of my favorite parts of the workshop, when we sit down to work through these things, it can really be magical. And the things that people start realizing are just tremendous. I'm going to go through a stakeholder engagement tool as well with you. This is pretty prescriptive. I will try not to spend a whole lot of time on it, but as you're doing it, you will spend a lot of time with it. As I said earlier, you're impacting tons of people when you're engaging on a large business transformation, hundreds, if not thousands. So you want to also be able to break things down in groups. Otherwise, it's just not feasible to do this by every person in the organization, but you need to be thinking about how different groups of people in the organization need to be communicated to, how they need to be communicated. And while they may not be your key decision makers, they need to know. It's not fair to not share the information with them. So, as you look at group size here, that's one of the keys. I'll take you through just an example. We'll use information technology line here at the top. So we've identified a group in information technology. We've brainstormed our list. And as we're talking about the information technology group and how they prioritize, we're thinking about them as a virtual group of individuals. So this is also a key important piece. If you're talking about merger and acquisition, and maybe you're going to have some facility changes as a result of that, you want to know where people are and if those things are going to impact them. That's going to be a key piece of how you might be communicating. As an example, this particular information technology group has a lot of work in this particular transformation project. The impact to them is significant, and their influence over how the project goes, the transformation success, is significant. So they have a high priority. And then the action that you need to take with them is to intervene. You need them to know what they have to do when they have to do it. So you have to be having like real intervention conversations with them, right? I'm not trying to make it sound overly dramatic, but they will be highly engaged. And the change curve for them, you need to understand where they currently are. Currently, they're in a place of understanding. Yeah, we know we're going to undertake this big transformation. But as the lead in this, or as the sponsor in this, or key stakeholder, I need that tech team to be committed. I need them to know the work they're going to do, when they need to do the work, and deliver on it. So they have to be committed to our goals and behind it. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time with them compared to some other individuals who may just need to be aware of what's happening. I'm going to communicate on a different level of frequency and a different time to them. So this stakeholder engagement tool is really important to inform your communication plan as well. Again, really passionate about these techniques that you can use and how everything links together. All right, now we're going to wrap up here shortly, and I'm going to just leave you with the decision-making process and the tool that I mentioned earlier, Rapid, which was developed by Bain and Company. And I'll just take you quickly through what Rapid stands for. Recommend, agree, perform, input, and decision. And we'll start here in the middle with the decision maker. So, you guys, it's one person. And I'm not saying it's one person for the entire organization, but we do not make decisions by committee. One person is responsible, accountable for the decision. So I want to make sure very clear about that. Come at me, argue me, whatever, but I'm not changing my mind. The individual who's making that decision typically is recommended or given options by a group of people who has gathered input from multiple different areas. And that input should include the individuals who will actually have to carry the work out after a decision is made. You don't want to skip that step, right? Make sure you've identified who's going to perform the work after the decision is made, because if they haven't been providing input to the recommendation, you could very well have to revisit the decision, which is going to take more time. It's not, I mean, the decision-making process is iterative, so it's not the end of the world, but realize that that can put some additional time. It can create lag for you. And it's also something you can avoid if we think back to those manageable risks, right? And then ultimately, who in your organization has to agree or approve, right? If you're in a merger and acquisition situation, which actually is a really good example for how to use this rapid tool, there are fiduciary responsibilities of different people in the organization. There are regulatory, governmental reasons that certain people in an organization are the people who have to approve something. Standard day-to-day work also, there's just separation of duties that have to exist for different compliance reasons. So it is really important that you have an understanding of who in your organization is responsible for the approval piece. I have used this rapid framework actually, and I mentioned the M&A situation. I've used it with teams coming together from a legal standpoint, government, regulatory compliance standpoint, information security, other technology groups, as well as apart from the M&A, just as large organizational changes are being made. Maybe you have disparate groups of program managers, project managers, business analysts in different parts of your organization. And this can be a useful decision-making tool also as you're bringing those teams together. So let's quickly look at an example here. The example I laid out that I shared in here is specific to information technology and in particular, information security roles with your CISO and your CIO being key here. And think about team A and team B in this visual as your acquiring organization and your target organization or the company being acquired. And at the end of this transformation, you will have parent, company, subsidiary, organization. So the teams put this list together themselves. So you ask them to list out all of their functions where they need to be making key decisions. And it could be on a daily basis. They could be decisions specifically related to this transformation you're undertaking, but I'll just run through one line item of an example here to give you an idea. So the first item that they identified declares security breach or incident. You see that the CIO is the approver here. Per their policy as an organization, the CIO of the parent needs to be the one to formally declare a security breach or incident. However, the subsidiary CIO is the one who has made the decision that, yes, we will declare a security breach. And they're taking that to their boss essentially and saying, hey, I made the decision. We need to declare security breach. The CIO is approving that. And the reason for this is because the subsidiary CIO in this example is the closest to what has actually happened, the closest to that business. The parent company CIO has a greater breadth of responsibilities. They've got multiple subsidiaries, multiple technology departments that they're concerned with on a day-to-day basis. So they just are not as close to that particular business to make that decision if the breach has occurred here. So just wanted to share that example. It's a really powerful tool. I mentioned also, as you know, M&A conversations where you're bringing two organizations, people at the same level together. There's, let's be real, there's a lot of ego involved, and these can be contentious situations. You don't want them to be. So going back to the culture, setting the culture, this is a great tool from a cultural perspective. You're getting the team together, you're asking them to collaborate through this process together as they're bringing their organizations together to create the future, right? Not looking back at what we did, but together, how are we creating the future? So I will leave you all with that today. I really appreciate you taking the time and being here. Again, just remember this is a 3-day transformation workshop where you can train your people to build that muscle so you can sustain this after you go through the transformation, after the consultants walk out the door, whomever you've hired, you have a sustainable organization at the end of the day that you worked so hard for, put so much effort for it, you wouldn't want that to fall apart. So if you'd like to reach out to me, here is my contact information. You can reach me through any of these methods. I so appreciate you spending time with me today. Enjoy your weekend.